Welcome back, Irish fans, to Breaking Down Braves Boys podcast. I know you can't see us, but we've had some technical difficulties. But it's me and Trevor today. We're going to talk about some new Notre Dame news and then how Notre Dame can end up making the tournament. We're getting closer and closer to college basketball season, so make sure to drop a subscribe and support the channel. It helps us out and helps my college resume look a little bit better if we have more subs. So I guess we'll get into it. So first, I guess the main news this week, which wasn't huge news, but definitely something to talk about, was Rod Balanis leaving Notre Dame and taking the associate head coaching job at Howard. I have a couple opinions on this also, but I'll go to Trevor first. What are your initial thoughts on Balanis leaving Notre Dame after a long run, which was longer than most of Notre Dame's players' lifespans?
Almost longer than my lifespan. But honestly, I mean, I think you got to start off just by saying, like, I'm obviously thankful for everything he's brought to Notre Dame. We've had some good years with him, had some down years with him as well. But just a couple of things to throw in there. Some of the highlights that I have on him is he was big on the recruiting of Jarian Grant and Tack Connaughton. And he worked with Zach August closely. So if you're a Notre Dame fan, all three of those names are big names, and they've brought a lot of winning seasons and obviously back-to-back Elite Eight runs. So he played a critical part of that, which is huge in our history of the program. So for that, I'm quite thankful. How much he'll be missed, we'll see. But I'm glad he has a spot where he can go and continue his career in the role that he wants.
Yeah, for sure. I just wanted to. You talked about having the role he wants. I wanted to touch on that also. He was going to be the director of basketball operations at Notre Dame. Because of all the new staff members Notre Dame got, Balanis wasn't going to be on the bench. And even though he was Bray's right-hand man, I think he ended up deciding that coaching was best for him, and that's ultimately what he wanted to do. So good for him that he was able to get a job there. I don't think it's an indictment on Notre Dame at all that he ended up leaving. But just wanted to touch on how crazy it is that he was on staff for, 21 years? Bray's right-hand man throughout basically his whole tenure, but just I think it's a nice showing that Bray is willing to change, which he hasn't done a whole lot throughout his time at Notre Dame. He's kind of had a lot of the same staff members revolving in and out, but interesting that Balanis moved on and now Bray has not necessarily new guys because most of them played for him, but a couple guys that he hasn't had on staff before, and his right-hand man is now gone. But got some brighter news. Notre Dame has started to recruit Elijah Saunders, 6'8" forward for the Compton Magic. Pretty sure he's an Arizona native. Notre Dame made the top 5 along with Virginia Tech, Miami, San Diego State, and South Carolina, where he has a future cast. We'll talk about that in a minute. I wouldn't put too much into that yet because he hasn't taken his visits, and he will be on campus at Notre Dame next weekend. While the Notre Dame football team's gone, wish he could have waited maybe one more week till the campus was buzzing, but I'm sure he had other visits to schedule, and that's what worked. But any thoughts on Elijah Saunders, either as a player or Notre Dame's chances with him?
I believe you have more on him than I do. I've only got to see his junior highlight tape. The positives I got out of that is he looks like he is a modern 4, and the fact that he can stretch the floor well. One of the things I wanted to see more in the highlight tape, granted it's only 10 minutes long of a whole season's worth of footage, but with him attacking more, I think something that you have to be in the ACC or just in Division I basketball is, from the big perspective, is you got to be able to finish around the rim and among athletes and stuff like that. And I didn't really see him doing a whole lot of that. Granted, he might be able to. And he has a senior season to get better at it or show that even more. I think it's an odd fit just because I think we have a lot of 4s kind of already on the roster. But like we were talking about before, like the idea of him possibly playing the 3. Also the fact that he could play well alongside like an Elijah Taylor or Matt Zona, just because he can stretch the floor a little bit better. But I don't mind just throwing an offer his way.
Yeah, the only thing I'm I'm kind of interested to see how that visit goes, just because I think we'll get more. Well, I don't think we'll get more of an idea, but I think he'll get more of an idea of how he'd be used here. And I do think he can complement Dom pretty well. Uh, that doesn't take away the issue of the logjam at power forward that's already there, and adding another one's interesting. But I think Saunders more of a 3-4 rather than a 4-5 like Dom is. Just because I think he's a little more agile, mobile, can create more out of the perimeter. I think he's more of a perimeter-centric big man than Dom is, where he's more of an inside-out guy rather than outside-in. But Saunders, I think, showed off more signs that he can be a 3 this summer. Just looks a little more athletic, quicker, and all that than he did in the junior tape to me. But I think Notre Dame definitely could have a shot here if they pursue enough. He does have a South Carolina future cast, which is a little concerning, but this weekend is a big opportunity for Notre Dame to sell him on some things and kind of explain more of how they see him fit. So that's an interesting thing to monitor to me. It's just, I wonder if Notre Dame can make a good enough pitch to get him to join Dom, is also a 6'8" big man. So that's kind of all I have for him. Really interesting to see that Notre Dame was interested in adding another guy like that. But they do have a lot of scholarships available, and taking a shot on a high upside guy isn't something to be super upset about. So, any closing thoughts on that before we talk about how Notre Dame can make the tournament, our main topic today?
Basically, the fact that I think you're right in saying we have a lot of offers to give. I think he kind of fit perfectly into that. Why not take a chance on the guy? I think our pitch can be pretty well. Let me rephrase that. I think our pitch could be well played just by saying, hey, you could probably play significant minutes in an ACC program since we don't have many bodies going forward. So other than that, I got nothing.
So moving on to the title of the episode, and probably what most of you are here for, is how does Notre Dame make the tournament? Notre Dame was 11-15 last year. Just a brutal season where they did show flashes, beat a ranked team, which they haven't done in years, beat Kentucky, beat Duke. I mean, you saw how good this team could be, but we're going to kind of talk about how everything should end up tying together for them to make a run not even just make a run in the tournament, just get to the tournament, which has been a goal for the program for years. And something that I think people in the program, from the conversations I've had, feel pretty good about. But to get there, we'll talk about that now. So, Trevor, I'll go to you first. What's your main thing that you think Notre Dame has to do to end up dancing in March again?
I think I'd start off just by saying I like to see us play with more of an edge. It doesn't show up on the stat sheet, stuff like that, but I think just watching the team and thinking back on like our last Elite Eight runs or the last time we were in the tournament, all those teams had played with an edge and just looked like they wanted it, and there are times throughout last season and the past few seasons where I feel like teams are just playing harder than us, and those teams during that run, for us anyways, it seemed like they knew what they were playing for. They wanted to represent Notre Dame well. They didn't want to be the team that didn't make the tournament once, we kind of got rolling there. It fell off with, I hate saying it, but with the four-star freshmen. So I think this year, them going into it as seniors now, that obviously they have to be hungry for it. But to me, it starts on the defensive end, and just looking at some of the stats, how many points we gave up per game, we ranked 263rd. Mike Bray always talks about it. It's one of our bigger things. It's visible every time you watch the game. And that's part of playing with an edge, guarding your man, staying in front of your man, things like that, things that the ACC has plenty of athletes and plenty of, people that, do that. And we have to be able to compete with them, and that's something that I think we've lacked, over the last 3 or 4 years.
Yeah, for sure. That was going to be our number one thing also, was defense. I think they'll get boosts this year with Anthony Sullivan on staff. We've talked about that in past episodes. Just Bray seems like he thinks it was a successful summer in instilling more of that edge that you talked about. and just getting the guys to get after it. But when you look at the roster, it's not like this can't be a good defensive team. Looking through it, like Cormac Ryan is a plus defender already. Trey Wirtz has potential to be a plus defender. We've seen it at times. In his first game, Bray said he was the best defender on the floor, essentially. Blake Wesley has an argument to be the number one defender on the team already as a freshman. Tony Saunders is versatile and a nice defensive piece who plays hard. And then you have like Paul Atkinson, who doesn't get back down easy, was one of the better defensive bigs in the Ivy League based on at least numbers, which I'm not sure I believe in defensive numbers as much as intensity, but I guess numbers do tell a bit of the story. But I don't know if you agree with that, but it seems like they have pieces to end up being a good defensive team, and if they can end up getting that number even close to 100 rather than 267 in the country, then this is a really good team who scores the ball a lot. And then if they can play good defense too, this is a heck of a team.
No kidding. I mean, I'm right there with you. I think when you look at the roster and just watching the games, you know that they all have the potential to do it. You talking on Anthony Sullivan was a big part that I was going to bring up as well. I loved the fact that we went out and got him. I mean, it was exactly what we needed, obviously. Somebody brings the edge, knows what he's doing on the defense end of the ball, which is what this team needs. And again, I'll just say one more time the fact that all these guys are seniors, so they have to be hungry. You know, Bray's told them all off season long that defense has been a big reason why we didn't get in the tournament last year. You know, it has to turn around this year. And you do throw in people like Cormac and Trey and Blake. All three of them can play defense. It's great. My big thing is just more in the post, or like Nate and Dane and players who can't, if they can even just get to just being average or just being in the right place at the right time. I mean, things like that can really elevate your team.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up, because my next thing was physicality down low, and I think they have the potential to do that too. I think we talked about this a little earlier, but you have guys like Elijah Taylor, who would have been a huge help last year in a game like UNC where they just got embarrassed. And Matt Zona, if he can end up moving around a little better, being a little more agile, he could be a big help on the boards, which we saw at times last year. The first UNC game, Zona got like 6 boards in like 10 minutes. And then you have Atkinson, who is just physically more imposing than Durham was. Then you have another summer of Nate. So I wouldn't say they're like a super physical blue-collar team down low like they probably want to be, but there's potential there. And I think that's something huge that they have to improve on too, which I think every Notre Dame fan could tell you after the UNC game, where Walker Kessler and Armando Bacot and Sharp and Brooks were, well, not Brooks, just those three were just playing volleyball down there. Just getting every
It was a long game.
It was a long game. It was unbelievable how long that game felt. And then it was Jack Nolan's last game too. That was a brutal night for pretty much every Notre Dame fan. But
Absolutely.
So I have 2 more things. I don't know if you have others outside of this. We talked about that you kind of have these also, but my third thing, and might be more important than even the physicality down low, is consistency from Notre Dame's guards. I mean, they scored a lot of points last year, but if you look at like Cormac and Wirtz and Dane and their game logs and stuff, none of those guys were consistently as good as we thought they could be. I mean, Wirtz and Cormac, even Cormac would have that 28-point game against Duke and then come out the next game and didn't have it. I mean, Hub, I don't think we're ever going to get like Hub to have 15 every night. I think it's more of what we saw this year. It's where Hub's going to come out and look completely dominant one night, and then the next night he'll be kind of erratic and won't have a great night. But to me, what's more achievable is having consistency from those secondary guys like Cormac, Wirtz, and Dane, who can help Hub by taking the ball out of his hands a little bit and scoring off the dribble, finding cutters, just stuff like that that they lacked at times last year. I think you just need more from your secondary options offensively, and I guess defensively too, like we talked about earlier. It's just we need those guys to be consistently good defenders. I don't know if Dane's going to be, just especially if he's at the 3 playing against like Aaron Henry, physical, massive dudes. But
yeah,
it's going to be tough for him. But the other 2 guys, if they can really get up into guys and just stay in front of guys like Sullivan's been preaching all summer, then Notre Dame's going to be in a much, much better spot if they can get consistency from those guys. Any thoughts on that or any new, keys this year?
Definitely. I think you're spot on in the fact of, guard play. Obviously, we have lots of guards on this roster. I think last year we kind of struggled with knowing everybody's roles at times. I don't think we really have go-to scorers. Paul Atkinson definitely changes that. I think he's somebody that is going to positively impact our team tremendously. I don't know if I said that correctly, but he's going to be a big, big piece. But as far as guards go, like you said, everybody was just hot and cold, hot and cold, hot and cold. I don't think we'll be a team. I think we'll be a team that beats people just because we have 4 or 5 guys that had 10, 12 points, and then one guy maybe with 18, 12. I mean, we're going to beat you because we have lots of options.
Yeah, definitely agreed. I think, like you were kind of saying, Paul Atkinson is kind of the center of it all, and Notre Dame could just be much better off if they have a guy down low, and that can kind of help with the consistency that I was talking about with the guards. Any closing thoughts on that before we head into my last thing, and maybe if you have another thing too?
No, I mean it all revolves around Paul. When you have a true post presence, this guy shoots a career 67% from 2-point attempts, which is the leader in Yale history. When you add that to your offense, everything opens up. We have the guards if they play consistently, like you said. We really could be. We really have the tools that it takes to take the next step this upcoming season. So that's all I got.
Yeah, for sure. So the last thing I kind of have is depth, which I think Notre Dame is in a much better spot, but I still wanted to mention it. If Notre Dame can get maybe 9 or 10 guys rather than the 7 and sometimes even 6 guys they had towards the beginning of last year, they're in a much better spot. We already know the rotation's at 8 with the 6 older guys, and then Bray said Blake and JR are going to be the rotation, which I think is a little unexpected, but good to hear for sure. And then you still need a third big, so Zona or Taylor will probably take that spot. And then you still have Robbie Carmody, Tony Sanders, the 2 walk-ons. I feel like I'm forgetting somebody, but I think that's it. You have all those guys still without roles, and I would venture to guess Robbie is going to end up having some sort of role. So the depth is there, assuming injuries don't come in. But I just wanted to touch on, I think that's pretty important for Notre Dame to make the tournament. Is like in the Ohio State game last year, they probably could have won that game, but Prentice and Cormac and even I think Dane ran out of gas towards the end of that game. So
right.
Definitely important to have depth. Anything else on that or anything you want to add about depth?
No, I think you're spot on. I think it's been something that's been talked about a lot over the past few years. It's just we haven't really had a bench to go to. You add, obviously we don't know what they're going to be like, but there's a lot of possible upside in having somebody like Blake be able to come off the bench, or JR, even Robbie. Hopefully Robbie. I'd love to see him. Even if it means like somebody like Tony doesn't play, that's fine. Let's let Robbie do his thing finally. But yeah, I think all good teams have depth, obviously. It's critical. Just like you said, to be able to finish games, to go 40 minutes playing good basketball, you got to be able to plug and play. And I think we do have the tools to do that if everybody stays healthy.
Yeah, for sure. Just want to touch on, I think this plays into the defense thing also, because it's like towards the end of the year mostly, Notre Dame was just dropping into zones to save their guys' legs, like Trey and Cormac and all them. But now you can just throw waves at guys. Like Blake can come in and pressure the ball, and then it can give Cormac or Trey a break. So I thought that can be an interesting element to this also with the depth.
I'll add just to that real quick. We were dead last in the country last year in forcing turnovers. And I think it plays a part because we were playing such a lapsed 2-3 instead of such, like an aggressive man-on-man, which a lot of teams can throw at you because they have that kind of depth.
Yeah, for sure. But that's all I have. Yeah, unless you have anything else, I think that's a pretty good breakdown of what Notre Dame kind of needs to add to their team and get out of their guys this year in order to be dancing in March. Anything else or any closing thoughts?
I have a couple closing thoughts. From our last 3 years that we made the tournament, which is 2014, 2015, and then 2016. In 2014, we won. I'm sorry. Let me have our home record right here real quick. We went 17-2 at home. In 2015, we went 14-2 at home. In 2016, we went 16-2 at home. Last year, we went 6-5. So being able to, obviously when fans come back, that's going to play a huge difference and stuff like that. But to be able to win the games at home has obviously always been critical for any winning team, really. One more thing I will throw in there is the fact that last year we were 126th in points per game and 66th in assists per game. We're obviously always seen as more of an offensive kind of program. We've been talking about defense the whole time. But offensively, I think bringing somebody like Paul Atkinson in opens this up. I cannot expect us to be 126th again. I think we'll be much, much higher next year in both categories just based off of that alone. And then defensively with Sullivan coming in, even Coach Antoni, or White. With him coming in as well. Yeah, I think all these are positives. So I think there is plenty to be excited about in this upcoming year if all the pieces fall really.
Yeah, that's a really interesting point about the home record. I hadn't really heard about that before, but even like the defense part kind of plays into that too, because you can feed off the crowd. Like if Blake gets a big stop or gets a steal and a dunk, these guys are locked in for time now, and the adrenaline's gonna keep them going even if they are tired. So I just thought that was a interesting thing also I hadn't thought of. But yeah.
Welcome back fans. I mean, come on, bring it in.
For sure.
Let's pack that place out.
Definitely. It might be tough early, but if they can start winning some games, this could be definitely something special towards the end of the year. But
it has that feeling, man. I'm not gonna lie, it has that feeling.
Yeah.
So
let's hope the feeling turns into tangible results.
Definitely.
Yeah, but that's all I have, and I think that's all you have. So thank you guys for watching. Thanks, Trevor, for coming on. Looking forward to keeping it going as we get closer to the year. And thank you guys for watching. Go Irish. Peace.